So I just recorded, and I started over, did it again because there's no sound or nothing, and I had forgotten to add myself to the stream. I'll call it a rookie or newbie mistake. That was I'm gonna type that in the comments, so if anybody ends up watching, I'll uh, so forgot to add myself to the live stream. Yeah, okay, sweet. So I maybe it's my old man age, I don't know, but I forgot to add myself to the live stream. So I was talking, but I wasn't actually in the live stream. That was super epic. You know what's funny though is I saw Jamie's comment and he was making fun of it. And I think back to one time I was listening to him talk and he had no audio and nobody was going into the live stream to tell him. And so I ended up joining the live stream and I told him, I'm like, look, dude, there's no audio. And then here he is making fun of me for it. Anyway, it's kind of like a cool SDA thing to do. But let's get into, I'm going to go right into the content because I finished all of it. And then I looked at the comments and there I was, not even in the live stream. So, all right, let's get to Daniel chapter 8. So, Daniel chapter 8, what the SDAs do is there's two words for vision. One is Chazown, one is mare. And Daniel chapter 8 utilizes both words to refer to vision. And so they'll use that to say that it links up with the mare in Daniel 9. Also, they will use an argument, which I'm going to address all these in Daniel 9, that the word decreed actually means cut off and is cut off from uh, the 2300 years in Daniel 8. And there's another simpler argument that they say the little horn comes from one of the four winds, and they say one of the four winds is from the west and that it is Rome. So, all right, let's get into Daniel 8. So, whenever the word vision in the text is used, I will supplement the Hebrew, either Chazown or mare, and that's going to be important because they what they say is that the mare is more. So how do I describe this? The Chazown refers to. I'll read. Never mind. I'll read their work. So if you want to understand more of how they describe this and detail this in their scholarly work, it's referred to it, or it's called Daniel and Revelation Committee Series. And it's a 7-volume series. I have 5 of the 7 books. I'm missing the ones on Hebrew, but in there's some really deep, rich scholarly work, and they focus in on the Hebrew syntax, the way the nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, all that, how they function together, female, the gender of it, the plurality of the words, dual, single, plural, all that kind of stuff. So it's if you don't know Hebrew, it can be kind of challenging, but they do have stuff in there that you can comprehend. So what's going on, fellas? Dan, brother Chris, how's it going, guys? All right. So in the third, I'm going to read it starting at verse 1 in Daniel 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a Chazown appeared to me. So this Chazown, what I'm going to argue for is it's the whole vision, starting from verse 1 and ending in verse 25, I believe it is. So this Chazown appeared to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. Now, verse 2, and I saw in the Chazown, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is the province of Elam. So notice here, these 2 points are going to be important, and I'll point them out again. Physically, his physical body was in Susa in the province of Elam. And that's where his physical body was when he had the Chazown, or when the Chazown was given to him. Then he goes on to say, and I saw in the Chazown, and I was at the Ulai Canal. So within the Chazown, or the vision, he is in a location called the Ulai Canal, and that will be very important. That distinction there is important. to show. That's important to show that this is all one vision. And so from verse 3 into verse 12, I believe it is just the Chazown, the you got the two goats, the two animals, the ram and the goat. But if you notice, there is not much attention that's given to the ram. It's almost like the ram is only mentioned to kind of to give without a shadow of a doubt that the the third kingdom is the goats. It seemed to be kind of why they're kind of give it more context, because especially in the explanation that's given in verses 17 to 25, there's just one little sentence about the ram, and then the rest is about the third kingdom. So very clearly, this calzone is basically focused on the third kingdom, and this is within the third kingdom is where the 2300 evenings and mornings will happen. So verse 4, 5, 6, 7, all that. Verse 4 is the ram, and then after that is the goat. And so in verse 8 here, and I'll explain this more later, and it's a very simple refutation that I have, but I think it's so simple and straightforward that there's no reason to say what they say about it. But here in verse 8, they say, "Then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken," that is Alexander, "and instead of it there came up four conspicuous horns toward the four winds of heaven. Out of one of them," and that what they say is out of one of them refers to out of one of the four winds, not one of the four horns. So they make that distinction there. And the reason why they do that is they say one of the four winds is the four directions on the compass, and the one they choose is west, and they choose Rome. Because remember, the little horn here in Daniel 8 is the same little horn in Daniel 7, so they have to do that. They have no choice but to do that. And so whether or not the text will actually show that, and I believe it doesn't within the context, and also from Daniel 11, I'll show this well too, that it's referring to coming out of the third kingdom. Okay, so we'll go down to verse. Let's see. We'll start at verse 12 because I'm going to point this out later on too. "And a host will be given over to it," that is the little horn, "together with the regular burnt offering." Notice, because of transgression. This will be said again in later verses. That transgression refers to the transgression of the Jews, in my personal opinion. "And it will throw truth to the ground." That is, the little horn will throw truth to the ground, and it will act and prosper. In verse 13, "Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, 'For how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering?'" You notice the burnt offering is mentioned, and I think that's a correct translation. Uh, the burnt offering, if I remember correctly, was said to the aroma was pleasing to God. He enjoyed the aroma of the burnt offering. So that's interesting that's mentioned there. He goes on, "The transgression that makes desolate, giving over the sanctuary and a host to be trampled underfoot. And he said to me, for 2300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful place." So here we have the time that is given, 2300 evening and morning, then this desolation, this trampling of the host and the sanctuary um, will cease, and the sanctuary will be restored to its rightful state. Now here we get into the Chazown and Mare. Verse 15, "When I, Daniel, had seen the Chazown, I sought to understand it." So he's still in the Chazown, and he's seeking to understand what he just saw. And it says, "And behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man." Now that word appearance is also mare, because one second. Remember, the word mare can also be used as appearance. Like in Daniel 1, I believe like 4 or 5 times, mare is used as referring to appearance of a man. So here it says, "And behold, there stood before me one having the mare of a man," or appearance of a man. Verse 16, "And I heard a man's voice between," notice this, between the banks of the Ulai. And it called Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So right here, it's make this man understand the mare. So what they say is that this is the mare that is linked with the mare in Daniel 9. But notice here, where's his location when he's given the mare? It's at the banks of the Ulai. So it's still within that original Chazown that was given in verse 1 and 2. So it's still, the context is still, it's not the mare in Daniel 9. The context is the Chazown of Daniel 8. Because look here, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai. Keep that in mind. Go back up to verse 2. What does it say? And I saw in the vision, and I was at the Ulai canal. Hold on, I'm having a coughing fit. Okay, so the Ulai canal is the location that is within the Chazown. Okay, so this mare, in other words, what we can say is that, how I would word this, Gabriel, give this man the mare of understanding, or the vision of understanding. So you can think of like this. He's having a vision within the vision, or he's having the visionary mare, or the visionary or the visionary, yeah, excuse me. He's having the visionary understanding within the vision, the Chazown. So he's having the understanding of the mare, or the mare of understanding within the Chazown. Sounds kind of confusing, but it's pretty simple. A vision within a vision. So that's the context, not Daniel 9, like I said. So we go on. This is the mare from verse 17 until verse 25. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, O son of man, that the vision, or I believe it's Chazown. Let me look at it real quick. Yeah. But the Chazown is for the time of the end. And remember me pointing out that the main focus of this Chazown is not the ram, it's the third kingdom. It's the goat. That is the focus. So this 2300 happens within that third kingdom. Verse 18, when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground, but he touched me and made me stand up. He said, behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation. So the latter end of the wrath of God, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. And there's no reason to refer to think of this appointed time of the end as the end of all things, the consummation of all things. That there's no reason for that. Verse 20, as for the ram, notice this, verse 20 is the only mention of the ram. As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Media Persia. So basically he's like, so the ram is Media Persia. But anyway, let's get on to the concept of the Chazown, which is starting in verse 21. The goat is the king of Greece, and from there it's all about Greece. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which four others arose, four kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the latter, notice at the latter end of their kingdom, that is the four kingdoms that are the third beast, not the fourth beast, but the third beast. At the latter end of their time, a king of boldface comes. So that's still within the third beast, the third kingdom. And this is all explaining the Chazown, which was from verses 3 to 12. He shall have, or his power shall be great, but not by his own. He shall cause fearful destruction, succeed in what he does, and destroy men and the people who are the saints. By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand. And in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many. He shall even rise up against the princes and shall be broken, but by no human hand. Now notice here, Let me look at them, make sure I get them, because I get them confused sometimes. Okay, here we go. The mare of the evenings and the mornings, which is 2300, uh, that has been told is true. It's correct, it's accurate, it's true, it's appropriate. But seal up the vision or seal up the Chazown. So the sealing up is not a supernatural concealing from people's minds. It's actually a preservation of the visions because it's true and it's accurate. For it refers to many days from now. So this Chazown refers to many days from now. And I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days. Then I rose and went about the king's business, but I was appalled by the mare, or astonished by the mare, and none understood it. So that could be understood either that Daniel did not understand it, or which it seems to be that he kind of did, at least to a certain extent, because in verse 26 it says that the mare of the evening and morning has been told is true. So it also could be understood that he's saying that he had some understanding, but that no one else that he talked to about understood it. So what they'll say, what the SDAs will say, is that because the mare, he lacked understanding of the mare, there still needed to be more mare given to him in order to understand this. Well, they say in verse or in chapter 9, this is exactly what happens. So really quick, the context of chapter 9 in verses 1 to 19 is Daniel's prayer for restoration of Israel because he understands the 70 years in Jeremiah are about to end. So starting in verse 20, he says, while I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people, presenting my plea. Now, my plea for what? My plea for restoration of not only my people, Israel, but also, excuse me, also the city or the land, Jerusalem, and also the sanctuary. In other words, the whole restoration of Israel is what he is pleading for. He says, plead before the Lord my God for the holy hill of my God. While I was speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, so they'll say this because Gabriel's here, it links it as well with Daniel 8. The man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the Chazown at the first, came to me in swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice. He made me understand. Now, something needs to be mentioned real quick. I forgot to mention. Whenever mare is used in Daniel 8 to refer to a vision, it's always with understanding. So that's significant in my personal opinion. So notice here he says, he made me understand, speaking with me and saying, oh, Daniel, I have now come out to give you insight and understanding. Well, the question there is insight and understanding of what? What's clear is the context is um, the um, the pleas for restoration that Daniel was given. Verse 23, at the beginning of your pleas, those same pleas that were in verse 20, for mercy, a word went out, and I have come to tell it to you, for you are greatly loved. Now, real quick, I just got to mention, have you ever thought what an angel would say to you if you were in Daniel's place here? Would he say that you are greatly loved? Or what would he say about you? I've thought about that with myself, and I don't know if he would say greatly loved about me, but I'd hope so. There he goes on to say, therefore consider the word and understand the mare. So right there, the mare is used with Gabriel coming down, and they say that links that with the same mare in Daniel 8. But what we saw in Daniel 8 was what? The context is the Chazown from verse 1 down to verse 25. That context is the context for that mare. This mare, the context for this mare is what? It's the pleas for restoration given by Daniel. Hold on, I'm going to read your comments. Hold on. Want to bet? Let me see. Are you blocked? No, why would you be blocked? He likes those who come to him obedient repentance. Okay. Yeah. That is why the mare is a part of the Chazown. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Want to bet about what? I don't have a lot of money to bet. Might want to check the end of Daniel 11 and beginning of Daniel 12. Time of the end being the second coming. Oh, okay, I got you. I mean, I don't see a need for that to be the time of the second coming. Um, but that's not the focus of this. The focus is more Mare and Calzone. And let me see what you say. Of course, it is referring to Daniel 8. Chapter 8 ends with Daniel saying he didn't understand the Mare. Well, no, that's debatable. It could also be understood as he's saying that none understood it, not including himself, because in verse 26, what did it say? That Daniel says the vision was, or the Calzone or the Mare was true. It was accurate. Let me pull up the word. Let me get to the word real quick. 8:26 was true. So the word is emeth, EMETH. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And the semantic range is going to be wide, obviously, like most words, but it can refer to sureness, reliability, stability, continuance, faithfulness. It's truth, uh, divine instruction, true doctrine. It has a wide range. But what it seemed to be saying is that Daniel's saying the Mare is true. And why would he even begin to say that if he lacked any understanding of it? Now, did he understand it in totality? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll get to that point as well in a second. Um, but the context is clear of the mare there. It's the Chazown, and that Chazown starts at verse 1 and doesn't end until verse 25. When he's given the mare is understanding of the Chazown that's given in verse 1. So there's no reason to then link that to um, chapter 9. When chapter 9, the mare there has its own context. And then there's another mare that has another context. Mare is used more than just in Daniel. There's no reason to make these kind of connections. The Mare is clearly the part of the prophecy about the Messiah. In Daniel 9, the Mare of Daniel 9 is about the Messiah. Yes, there's no question about that. But that's not the same Mare from Daniel 8. The Mare of Daniel 8 is the explanation of the Chazown that's given from verse 3 to 12. That's the Mare. But anyways, I'm going to get back to reading. All right. So I think I forgot what I was saying, but oh yeah, the verse 23 here has the mare, and that's what they say links it up with Daniel 8, which that's very arbitrary. But here and also in Daniel 9:24, what they will say is that the word decreed is improperly translated, and they'll do this a lot. They'll say translations are faulty and wrong. And a lot of groups will say that when they have a certain belief that they want to put into the text. And really, what this boils down to is 1844. If 1844 was never a thing, nobody would be making this point and trying to say that the 2300 starts in 457 BC. None of this would be said. We wouldn't be having this discussion right now. But because they believe 1844 is a prophetic year, then they have to make these points. But here in Daniel 9:24, there's what's called a hapax legomenon. And that means there is a word or a phrase that is only used once within the scriptures. And this word here is kathak. Now, kathak, Chathak. They have it usually translated as determined or decreed. And what the SDA will say is that that's wrong. And what actually should be translated as is cut off, literally cut off from something. They'll say things like, well, the Mishnah uses that way, and so we should then translate the word in that exact same way as the Mishnah does, which is faulty reasoning in my personal opinion. But what I always say when we talk about words is that Any word without a context has no meaning. It only has a sense or a definition, or senses and definitions, or in other words, a semantic range. The only time a word ever has any meaning is when you put it into a specific context, that is, in the sentence and then in the paragraph, in the chapter. It's given its meaning there. And so, especially with a hapax legomenon, you don't then go out to the Mishnah or some other outsource and then conclude from that that is the same context that is spoken out in the hapax legomenon in the scripture, and we must translate it that way. But even if we were to translate it that way, which I don't see any reason not to use the determine or decree. I think translators were just fine in translating it as decreed or determined, given the context that of Daniel 9. But let's say that it is cut off and it's not decreed or determined. Cut off from what? Well, there seems to be a time period that is cut off for the people of. I'm trying to adjust in my chair here. 77s are cut off from time for your people and your holy city. There's no reason to think that it's cut off from another prophecy when there's nothing in the context that even hints at that. That is an arbitrary connection because you want 1844 to be true, not because the text is telling you that. Nobody would ever make that connection to prove 1844 unless, they went through that great time, that honestly, of that false prophecy. So, like I said, even if you want to go with cut off, it still doesn't prove their point, because let's say, for argument's sake, even if it is cut off from the 2300, there's nothing in the word kathak that tells you have to cut it off from the beginning of the 2300. That is another excuse me, that is another decision they have to make, I would argue, in a biased manner, to prove 1844, but they have to make that decision, because it could be cut off from the middle of the 2300, from towards the end of the 2300. It does not have to be cut off from the beginning. So it's honestly an explanation that's really wanting. Let me think what I've covered and what else I need to cover. You pointed out that the Mare is part of the Greater Chazown. It could be. No, it is wrong, because there's no reason to make these two contexts in chapter 8 and 9 linked together as the same Mare, when the Mare in Daniel 8 is the Mare for Daniel 8 of that Chazown in Daniel 8, and the Mare is the Mare for Daniel 9 in reference to the pleas that he had from verse 1 to 19. Okay, here. So in Daniel 10:1, it says what? In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the Mare. What Mare is this even talking about here? Is it talking about verses 10 through 12? Whatever in is it talking about chapters 10 through 12? Or is it talking about Daniel 8? I think it's talking about Daniel 8 here. It's saying that he had understanding of the Mare. That right there, understanding of the Mare, is the exact same thing that's used. But why don't you link? No, he didn't put chapters in the text. I understand. I already addressed that. But look at Daniel 10. He has understanding of the Mare. What Mare? Why isn't this Mare here referring to Daniel 8? That would make more sense to then go to this hapax legomenon, kathak, and this other context of Daniel 9, when Daniel 10:1 says he has understanding of the Mare, which is, I would say, that same Mare in Daniel 8. But Daniel 10:1, I just read it, dude. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word and had understanding of the mare. Daniel 10, verse 1. So that understanding of the mare is way more simpler. It makes so much more sense just to simply say this right here. He has understanding of the mare in Daniel 8, as opposed to doing all of this grammatical. I mean, my goodness, I have five of the 7 books of this Daniel and Revelation committee series, and they have like 700-800 pages just on Daniel 8 and 9, just to try to prove that this is true. When I go out and I talk to people at my business about the scriptures, I don't need 700 pages of a Daniel and Revelation committee breaking down the Hebrew syntax to explain stuff like this. I know you do. I know this is the scholarly work that you want to go to if you are an SDA. But the point being is that Daniel 10:1 clearly says he had understanding of the Mare. I'm aware. It was like what, the 70s or 80s these were written. I'm aware. Yes. Okay. Anyways, so Daniel 10:1, the understanding of the Mare, it I think it's referring to Daniel chapter 8 and not 10 through 12, because in 12 it says to, I think it's verse 8. Let me get to it. Oh, verse 9, it says, shut up and seal these words. And so it'd make more sense that he, at the very least, understood Daniel 8, the Mari of Daniel 8, as opposed to 10 through 12. But let's focus on, I think I've addressed the Kathak and Mare enough that it's clear. So the argument that I mentioned earlier, they'll say the 4 winds. So let's look at Daniel 8:8. Then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken. I don't think there's any dispute. The great horn there is Alexander the Great. I believe we all agree on that. And instead of it, there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. So there's the 4 conspicuous horns. I believe we all would also agree that it's the 4 generals that took over the third beast. That's still referring to the third beast. Now, out of one of them, that they say refers to the 4 winds and not the 4 conspicuous horns. And they'll go to the Hebrew, they say the noun with the masculine and the feminine and the singular and the plural, all that kind of stuff to try to make that argument. But again, I think it's pretty simple, that it's a distinction without a difference. So it doesn't matter if you say 4 horns, if you say that the little horn comes out of the 4 horns or the 4 winds, that's a distinction without a difference. It does not matter. So let's go to the explanation that's given, or the mare that's given of that Chazown right there. So in the mare of that Chazown, he says what? Let's start here in verse 21. And the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. So first king again is Alexander the Great. Now notice here in verse 22, as for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. So this is this is saying what verse 8 and 9 is talking about. And notice what it's saying. I will read it with the words of verse 8 and 9. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 conspicuous horns arose, 4 winds shall arise from his nation. So in other words, there's the 4 kings, the 4 conspicuous horns, and then there's the 4 winds, 4 kingdoms. Now, it could be read another way, but the reason why I would read this is, let's go to Daniel chapter 11 and verse 4. Look at Daniel 11 verse 4. And here we go. I'm going to read Daniel 11 verse 4. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom, now this is referring to Alexander the Great again, we would all agree with this. His kingdom shall be broken, and notice this, and divided toward the four winds of heaven. You see why I'm saying it's a distinction without a difference. It does not matter if you say horn or wind. I'm going to read that again. Daniel 11:4. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken. That is Alexander the Great's kingdom, or the third beast's kingdom, and divided toward the four winds of heaven. The four horns, the four winds, the little horn comes out of both of those. It does not matter if you say wind or horn. If you say one, you're saying the other as well. So I have in my library the SDA commentary. This is the Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 4, Isaiah to Malachi. Okay. This is page 866, and they're commenting on this very verse here, verse 4, and on the phrase, the four winds. And they say, representing the four quarters of the compass, that is, the four winds, the same division is represented by the four heads of the leopard and by the four horns of the goat in chapter 8, verse 8 and 22. They say the exact same thing I'm saying. So why make that arbitrary distinction between wind and horn when there's no reason to? Well, because you have, again, 1844 that you have to prove to be true. If you didn't have that 1844, you didn't have to prove it to be true. You wouldn't have to do these kind of gymnastics. But you do. You have it, so you do. Oh, I'm also going to read in the SDA Bible commentary. Is commenting on chapter 7. I found this comment kind of interesting. On page 881, it's commenting on verse 11 and on the phrase 1,290 days. The last paragraph, they say, those who hold, and I quote, those who hold to the view that the daily refers to the continual priestly ministry of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary and to the true worship of Christ in the gospel age, and in parentheses they say, see on chapter 8:11, find no satisfactory explanation of this text. They believe that this is one of those scripture passages on which future study will shed further light. Let me say that again. And I quote again, those who hold to the view that the daily refers to the continual priestly ministry of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary and to the true worship of Christ in the gospel age find no satisfactory explanation of this text. They believe that this is one of those scripture passages on which future study will shed further light. And this is the SDA Bible Commentary, Volume 4, page 881. That is very telling in my personal opinion. So they definitely recognize that there are some issues with this position. And this is the official commentary. These people are scholars as well. I'm being unfair with what? What am I being unfair with? I can't merely be talking about grace. The whole context makes it clear it's talking about the third kingdom. It's not talking about the fourth kingdom. But I'm not sure what I'm being unfair about. I'm disagreeing with the SDA position. I believe it's false. I believe it's only being held onto because you have 1844 to prove, and you have to prove it from. There's only one time that goes all the way to 1844 if you add a day for a year, which is 2300. Without that, there is no 1844. No, that is the reason why you hold to 1844 is that verse right there. And so the Daniel Revelation Committee creates 700 pages or more on just Daniel 8 and 9 to try to prove this. When you can just read the text and see that it's talking about the third kingdom, not the fourth kingdom. I just went over that. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. So I can just click on this and show. That's cool. I just learned something new. Cut off in Daniel 9:27 means these weeks have been cut out of time. Exactly. That's why decreed or determined is a proper translation, because it's very clear that the context we're referring to a specific or determined time period for the people of Israel and for the city. So there's no reason to translate it as cut off, but if you want to, go right ahead. It still does not prove the point that it's cut off from the 2300 evenings and mornings in Daniel 8, which is why they say the Mare and the Chazown, God is saying, I've cut out this much time for you. He's yeah, no, I agree 100%. We agree. I've converted you. All right. Right on. So, I mean, there's not much more. Let's see. If there's more, I'm getting pretty tired. And so if there's more, I've just forgotten. And you know what? That is what it is, what it is. I run my own business. I have a family. I take care of my home. I work on my own vehicle. So I do a lot. So my brain is starting to get slower and slower. Present real quick, present something if you want it in the comment, and I'll address it. Yeah, the Mare is part of the Chazown, right? And each Chazown has its own Mare if there is a Chazown. So in Daniel 8, the Chazown is from verse 1 all the way to verse 25. And in verse 16, he makes it clear that he's still in that first Chazown, and that's still the context of the Mare. Me too. Only I have no kids. I mean, not everybody has kids, but man. All right. So read what happens at the end of Daniel 11 and 12. Yeah, I don't really have. I'm not gonna. I'll read it for you, but I don't really have a. I don't have a solid position on chapters 11 and 12, so I won't speak to my own understanding too much or at all, because things that I don't study in depth or I don't have a solid grasp of, I won't comment too much on, because it can go either way. But this Mare and this Chazown is pretty clear to me that, and I've done a lot of study on that. I mean, well, yeah. So like things like the state of the dead, for example, I've only done so much study, and I'm not going to speak authoritative one way or another. Um, I do see certain things, but I see good arguments on both sides, and I just haven't come to a conclusion yet. But for example, the millennial view, I have studied a lot, and I have my position. And I will speak on that. Let's say you got smashed without answers. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't mind being honest when I don't know. I don't know. Um, but I mean, just going to the text in a non-biased way, not holding to any position, whether Antiochus or otherwise, or 1844, it's pretty clear the Chazown, the Mare is given in the context of the Chazown that is in Daniel 8, because in verse 16, where's his location in the Chazown? He's still in the Chazown because his location is the Ulai Canal, which is within the Chazown. Oh yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't. I didn't hear it, and so I don't know, man. I can't tell you on that. Um, I'm still learning this program too. I'm kind of curious how things work out. private chat. uh, yeah. I don't know, I'll figure things out. What not while I'm live on here. So I'm gonna end the live stream. Appreciate you guys watching, listening, and commenting. Grace and peace. God bless.